This is the case of Alexis Murphy. Alexis Tiara Murphy was born in Charlottesville, Virginia, to parents Laura and Troy. Alexis is remembered as a beautiful, joyful, vibrant, and athletic young girl. She attended Nelson County High School, and at the time of the case, she was close to graduation. She was also the high school volleyball team captain, and she planned on continuing the sport once she transitioned to college here pretty soon. Overall, she was a pretty popular kid in high school, and that popularity followed her online as well. Alexis had a huge following on social media. She was a social media queen before it was even a thing. Before we dive into today's case, please make sure you subscribe my channel for here such a real crime stories and hit bell icon. She was always posting videos of herself, updating her followers, as well as her friends on what she was doing and where she was going, and she'd always make videos of herself having fun and dancing and singing. She basically documented her entire life online. Alexis's mom, Laura, believes that if she were here today, she would have been TikTok famous, which feels like every teenager's dream these days. But Alexis wasn't snobby about her popularity. She was actually incredibly kind and was the type of person that would strike up a conversation with darn near anybody. But this was actually the problem. See, Alexis was known for being friendly, sometimes to a fault, and some people theorized that the friendliness, it may have been the catalyst for her disappearance. Alexis and her family lived in Shipman, Virginia, at the time of the case, and on one particular day, in August of 2013, Alexis wanted to go to the salon to get her hair done. See, Alexis was in her senior year of high school and was about to get her pictures taken. So, she wanted to look good, so she headed off to the salon to get her hair all gussied up for picture day. It was August 3rd, and Alexis woke up, got dressed, and came barreling down the stairs. And her mom, Laura, remembers this day like it was yesterday. Laura gave Alexis some money for her trip to the salon while she got ready for her shift at the post office. Alexis was happy and laughing, and it just seemed like any other day in the Murphy home. But little did they know, this day would turn tragic really quickly. Alexis hopped into her dad's white Nissan Maxima and made her way to Lynchburg, which is about 20 minutes from her home. Alexis also posted on her Twitter about Lynchburg later that day. But this was the last thing Alexis did before everything went silent. There were no more posts, no more calls or messages. Now, Alexis's family didn't think too much of this at the time. They thought that Alexis was out with friends having a good time, so they didn't blow up her phone with a bunch of texts. But it wasn't until midnight that Alexis's family started to worry about her. See, Alexis was 17, and she had a midnight curfew. Wherever she was, Alexis had to be home by midnight, and mostly she was. Alexis wasn't the type to regularly break her curfew, disappoint her parents like that, or make them worry. So, when Alexis's grandmother went up to check on her after midnight in the early hours of August 4th, she was stunned with fear to see that Alexis's room was empty, and herb had been made up since that morning. It was like she never came back home, and sadly, that was the truth. Alexis's grandma immediately called Laura and Troy, and within minutes, their minds were going to some worrisome places. They were dreading that Alexis had an accident or she met with some kind of trouble. Now, while this is normally the case if you're a parent, assuming the worst, but hoping for the best, something about Alexis's disappearance, it just felt different. So, without wasting a single second, Alexis was reported missing. Alexis's family spread the word of her disappearance on social media like a wildfire, and thankfully, a lot of people were there to help. They quickly plastered Alexis's name and her disappearance all over social media, and within no time, everyone knew that a teen girl had gone missing. Social media was a great help, and Alexis's family was really grateful for all the help they got from the people who knew. and followed Alexis. On the other hand, the detectives were also onto the case instantly because it didn't make sense. Alexis couldn't have run away from home. She literally just went out to run an errand. There's no indication that Alexis was sad or thinking about running away from it all. It seems like every time a teen goes missing, police want to claim that they just ran away. But that narrative just didn't fit in Alexis's case. She was in her senior year. She was excited about all the fun stuff happening in her life. So where would she have run off to? The investigators had to find the answers to this haunting question. They started by tracing Alexis's footsteps and where she went on August 3rd. Now we know that Alexis Wason, her way to Lynchburg. So when the detectives searched the vast area, the search led them to a gas station in Lovingston, Virginia. But why were the police at this gas station? Well, that was because the detectives found out that this gas station surveillance footage caught Alexis on the property on the day she went missing. So, the investigators checked the footage, and even though they found nothing out of the ordinary at first, they saw something or someone as Alexis was leaving. Alexis was calm and her usual self. The detectives didn't think that she was being followed by anyone at that point, nor was she uncomfortable with anyone's presence. Alexis was seen walking into the station wearing the same clothes her parents remembered. She filled her car with gas and she went inside sometime later. But as she was coming out, someone held the door open for her. It was a man, but his face wasn't exactly visible since the footage was grainy at best. But there was a distinct, incisable tattoo on the side of the man's neck, and he was wearing a white shirt. So the police had something, even though it wasn't much. But why were the detectives looking at a guy who was doing nothing but holding a door for Alexis? If anything, it's an everyday normal experience. You go out, multiple people hold the door open for you, or you do the same for them. So, why were the investigators so hell-bent on this random guy? Well, that's because the mysterious guy also had a vehicle that could only be described as unique. See, the man had a camouflaged suburban Jeep, and it stood out to the police for some odd reason. Police don't typically pursue leads on a hunch. I mean, they're not really allowed to, but something about this guy just seemed off. So, while the detectives were investigating other things, like Alexis's phone location, it had now been 3 days since her disappearance, and things weren't looking good. Alexis had been gone for 72 hours. At this point, everyone believed that something bad had happened to her, because this was all just so odd. Well, on August 6th, their suspicions were confirmed, and they came across something in a theater parking lot. As police caught wind of a suspicious vehicle in the parking lot, the investigators went out to check it out and found an abandoned white Nissan Maxima. When Alexis's family was called to the scene, they identified it as the same car Alexis was driving the day she went missing. It was Alexis's dad, Troy's car, but there was no sign of his daughter in it. The thing is, Alexis would never just leave the care unattended like that. Well, unless she was in danger, and someone had forced her out of the car or something like that. The detectives wanted to know how their car had gotten there. So, they decided to check neighboring CCTV cameras. That was when they came across a nearby mall, and luckily, the camera's direction was in the parking lot. When the police viewed the footage close at 10:30 p.m., the day after Alexis went missing, they saw someone driving Alexis's car and getting out of it before making their journey back to wherever they'd come from on foot. The footage was extremely grainy and black and white, and even after enhancing the quality, the driver could not be made out. But even though the detectives couldn't see the face of the driver, one thing was for sure. The person walking out of that car wasn't Alexis. It was a man. Well, at least judging by the silhouette and general physique of the driver, it at least looked like a man. So, the investigators knew that this man, or whoever it was the person responsible for Alexis's disappearance. But why would he have her car? Well, if you remember, the detectives were also looking into her phone location, and within days, they got a promising lead. The cell phone was pinging from an area that was approximately a mile away from the gas station where Alexis was last seen. When the police narrowed in on an area, it was an abandoned house surrounded by vegetation. But the detectives spotted something else too. There in the tall vegetation, a not-so-camouflaged vehicle was parked. It looked eerily similar to the mysterious man's truck at the gas station, the same man who held the door for Alexis on the day she went missing. This was highly suspicious and couldn't just be a coincidence. But did the investigators manage to get their guy? Well, there's only one way to find out. So, that abandoned house was not actually abandoned, and it wasn't technically a house. It was more of a camper situation, and someone lived there, but it looked fit to be abandoned in the eyes of many people. When the detectives knocked on the door, a man came out, and what the police noticed, right off the bat, was the large dark neck tattoo that he had. It was a Davy Duck tattoo. When the detectives asked who the man was, he introduced himself as Randy Taylor, and he also confirmed that the vehicle was his. When the investigators asked about Alexis, Thaman feigned ignorance. He said he didn't know her and hadn't seen her. Still, the detectives had their suspicions, so they wanted to take a look inside the camper. Randy gave the investigators their go-ahead, and right as they stepped foot into the camper, their eyes caught the sight of something suspicious on the floor. It was a diamond stud, and the police thought that it was either an earring or a nose piercing, both of which Alexis had at the time of her disappearance. Moreover, the detectives managed to find what looked like a broken fingernail, as well as a strand of black hair on the carpet flooring, as well as on the pillow on Rye's bed. The investigators took all of these things as evidence, and they sent them for testing. They wanted to see whether these things matched Alexis's DNA or not. In the meantime, the detectives left without arresting Randy because they needed solid proof. But that didn't mean he was off the hook. Randy was a weird guy. He was the type of person you wouldn't want to be alone with at a bus stop or on a quiet street. He just didn't have that vibe to him that screamed safe. It was pretty much the opposite. Anyway, when the DNA results came back, the police's suspicions were cemented. The fingernail and the hair matched Alexis's DNA. So Alexis was in Rye's camper. But why? Well, they didn't know each other. Alexis surely didn't hang out with him in the past. So, why was Alexis's DNA all over Rye's camper? And more importantly, what had happened in that camper? Where was Alexis now? And was she even alive? Well, the police didn't want to answer that last question right away, partly because they were dreading where the evidence was pointing. With this revelation, Randy was the main suspect in Alexis's disappearance. And when the investigators confronted him with DNA evidence, that was when Rye's story changed. He suddenly went from not knowing who Alexis was to now remembering her coming to his camper. See, Randy said he was minding his own business in his camper when he heard a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he saw a man with dreadlocks as well as a young 17-year-old looking girl, and the duo wanted illegal substances from him. According to Randy, the pair came inside the camper, sat down, had a few beers, and apparently Alexis left the camper with Mr. Dreadlocks all happy and giggly in his car. Randy stressed that he was just a nice host who opened his camper door to two people, practical strangers. Well, when the detectives asked who the man with the dreadlocks was, Randy said that his name was Damien, and so the investigators went to have a chat with Damien himself. But they soon found out Damien knew nothing about Alexis or meeting Randy on August 3rd, because he was in Alabama at the time, which the police were able to confirm. So, the detectives knew that they had just been fooled by Randy, and they immediately arrested him on suspicion of abduction. Also, the investigators decided to dig into who Randy actually was, And when investigators asked around, they were surprised, but not really. One look at this guy, and you know he probably has a shady past. Well, it turned out Randy loved to creep people out. The employees of the very gas station that Randy visited when Alexis was last seen had a lot to say about Randy. The gas station employees, as well as customers, claimed that Randy would sit in his Jeep 4 hours in the parking lot and stare people down. He clearly made people uncomfortable. There was never any reason as to why he would spend so much time at that gas station. He just did. Also, the detectives got a very interesting piece of information from another employee. See, this person worked at an adult movie shop, and it claimed that just 45 minutes to an hour before Randy was seen with Alexis on CCTV at that gas station, he was at the shop buying adult movies. So, the police knew that it was high time for them to search Rye's camper and turn it upside down for any evidence. And what would you know? They found something, and it led to a discovery that everyone had feared all along. Upon obtaining a search warrant for Rye's camper, the detectives searched every nook and cranny of the place, and under the couch, they found something. It was a white t-shirt, and wrapped in that shirt were black hair extensions, as well as fake eyelashes. It was the same white shirt Randy was wearing in the CCTV footage from the gas station. But there was something else the investigators discovered, and it left them horrified. When the detectives turned the shirt around, they were terrified to see a big red stain on it. All the items found were sent for DNA testing, and within no time, the results came back, and the DNA on the shirt and the hair extensions matched that of Alexis. Things were getting pretty dark pretty fast, but there was sadly more. The police also recovered a scrapbook, and it was a glimpse into this creepy dude's mind. He had cut out photos of models wearing Gracie clothing, but the faces were cut out and swapped for a young girl. But it wasn't just a random girl though. This was clearly the face of someone super young, likely in their teens. And when the detectives dug some more, they found something. The young girl in those pictures was Rye's co-worker's daughter. If you didn't think that this man was disgusting already, then here's your proof. A 48-year-old man had the hots for a young girl who I'm assuming could be a teenager. But even if she isn't, everything about this situation made everyone's skin crawl with disgust. It's just creepy to another level. I mean, where could this dude even find so many pictures of his co-worker's daughter? There's so many levels of this that are mind-boggling and largely remain unexplained. The investigators also managed to find Alexis's phone a few feet away from Rye's camper. The evidence against this man is just piling up by the second, and it seems painfully clear what took place here. But did Randy own up to his crimes? Of course not. He was still in jail being held on the abduction charges, and yet he was going on and on about how he didn't know anything about Alexis or who she was. The police, on the other hand, searched high and low for Alexis. But the chances of finding her alive were getting slimmer by the day, and by this point, it was no longer a rescue mission. It was a recovery one. Alexis's family was just so devastated at how quickly things had taken a turn for the worse, and how it all happened so quickly. When you put yourself in the place of these parents, loved ones, whoever it may be, it can really put you in a weird, confused headspace. When you think about it, just a few days ago, Alexis was sitting in the living room with her family, laughing and chatting about who knows what. But now she's gone and this guy's to blame. I mean, it physically hurts me to even try to understand this level of dread, confusion, of grief. It's like last Thursday we were all out getting ice cream. Now this Thursday, we're arranging a funeral. This is basically the scenario that Alexis's family found themselves in. Alexis had gone out touring an errand, something a lot of women and girls do without a second thought, but she never returned. And now, the detectives concluded she may not even be alive anymore. It's so hard to imagine being in her family's shoes at that moment, and how quickly their hope just plummeted. But there was one more tragedy in store for the Murphy family, because even after a month of extensive searching, Alexis still wasn't found, and if there was no body, then how could the Murphy family really truly move on? And worse yet, without a body, was Randy Evan going to be successfully tried for her murder? The investigators were confident they could convict Randy for murder without having recovered Alexis's body. And that's exactly what they did. Randy was charged with Alexis's murder on September 24th of 2013. More than a month after Alexis's disappearance, Randy was indicted on 2 felony charges. In January of 2014, he was charged with first-degree murder, first-degree felony murder, and abduction with intent to defile, as well as an unrelated grand larceny charge. Randy pleaded not guilty to all of these charges, and he was awaiting trial, which was scheduled for May of that same year. When the trial rolled around, the prosecution presented all the evidence, including Alexis's DNA, as well as the CCTV footage, and there was nothing left to argue. On May 8th of 2014, Randy Taylor was found guilty on all charges, and he was sentenced to 2 life sentences. In July of 2014, he tried to appeal for a lesser sentence by swaying the jury and confusing them that another person was involved in Alexis's murder, but obviously that didn't work. Randy was successfully convicted, and this man will never be allowed out of prison again. But his games weren't over just yet. Shortly after the trial, Randy thought of a splendid idea to bring himself back into the spotlight. See, in October of 2014, Randy claimed that the investigators had the wrong guy, and their old murderer was still at large. When asked who he was trying to point fingers at, a familiar name popped up: Jesse Matthews. See, unfortunately, at the time of Alexis's disappearance, Virginia was plagued with a lot of other missing person cases. Morgan Harrington, Hannah Graham, and Samantha Clark had just gone missing minutes away from where Alexis was last seen and where her car was found abandoned. Jesse Matthews was a prime suspect in Morgan's as well as Hannah's disappearance. His description matched the man who claimed to be with Alexis on the day that she visited the camper. Jesse was huge, and he also had dreadlocks. This tip by Randy sent the police on a wild goose chase to rule Jesse out. And when they ran DNA and other implicatory tests, Jesse Matthews was eventually ruled out as a suspect in Alexis's case. But it wasn't like Jesse was a good, clean person or anything. If anything, Randy and Jesse were 2 peas in a pod. Jesse had taken the lives of Morgan and Hannah and was charged with their murders. But seeing Randy throw Jesse under the bus to save himself, well, that's just appalling. The lengths people like this will go to save their own skin is seriously alarming, concerning the lack of regard they have for their own victims. But finally, the whole fiasco with Jesse Matthews was over, and Randy was behind bars. But the Murphy family still wanted to find Alexis and bring her back home. Randy tried to persuade prosecutors to reduce his 2 life sentences to just 20 years in exchange for the location of Alexis's body. But the Murphy family denied this, even though they wanted this closure badly. They wanted Randy to suffer and see the end of his punishment, even if it meant that Alexis couldn't be found. Even though they signed away the possibility of having their daughter's killer reveal her location though, the Murphy family pressed on. And in the end, they would have to wait another 6 years before they got the news that Alexis was found on December 3rd of 2020. 6 years after, Randy was thrown behind bars for murdering her. Human remains were found in Lovington near the gas station where she was last seen. But it wasn't until February of 2021 that those remains were positively identified as Alexis Murphy. Medical examiners believe that Alexis was smothered, and it's also believed that Randy forced himself on her, which makes the situation all that much worse. It's believed that Randy somehow persuaded Alexis to follow him from Thegus Station to his camper, where he ended her life. The hair extensions and the broken nails could point towards a struggle, but in the end, Alexis couldn't save herself. He then disposed of her body and her phone nearby and dusted off his hands like nothing even happened. After all was said and done, Alexis's celebration of life was held on June 6, 2021, on her 25th birthday. It was held in her high school football stadium, and people crowded the expansive space to pay their respects to a happy, hilarious, and wise young girl who lost her life so suddenly and needlessly. The Murphy family has also built a garden for a memorial, which holds Alexis's ashes. At the end of it, her family is hurt, but they're also at peace. Her life was so shamelessly cut short, and for one man's sick pleasure, it is truly disgusting. But somehow they've managed to put their weapons down, admit that what's done is done, and find some level of peace in the aftermath of this mess. It's truly amazing, if I'm being honest, that they were able to find any level of comfort after something so tragic tore their family apart. My heart aches so much for them. But to know that they finally made it to the other side of this, it's just amazing. It's unbelievable that Alexis was targeted the way that she was. It's not like she was in a particularly dangerous place or anything like that. She was just gonna get some gas and go about her day the same way we all do. It really just goes to show that no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, none of us are ever truly safe.